Islam became distorted because the Pale Arabs and Persians immediately launched on Muhammad and messed up everything he was teaching and bred this thing you see today they call Islam. After Muhammad died, they started to record what they call the Sunnah and the Hadith. These books changed the root meaning of Al-Islam, meaning the peace to submitters, and now Islam is associated with nothing but bloodshed, war, terrorism, segregation, subjugation, and sectism. And the people who are controlling Islam are pale and red desert Arabs, whom the Quran 997 tells you are the worst in belief. Quran 997, the Arabs of the desert are the worst in unbelief and hypocrisy, and most fitted to be in ignorance of the command which God hath sent down to his apostle. But God is all-knowing, all-wise. They have become what is known as the Orthodox Sunni Muslims, which is the largest sect of Muslims, who feel that no one can question them. That is why I felt the need to bring out all of the lies and fallacies in this false Islam that they are promoting. It has to be a Muslim who questions them. This is why for over 25 years, I have lived as them, prayed as they do, studied their books, traveled to all their holy cities, spoken with their leaders in Arabic, and lived in Islamic countries so that I could question them from the inside about the things they had been looking at for years but were afraid to mention. Why? Because they are under a rulership, a sort of kingship that says, if you ever question them, you are deviating from the norm. You are out of mainstream Islam. If you start to question Hadith and the Sunnah, or if you start to question which Quran is correct, which translation is correct, or which school is correct, or if the very Arabic in the Quran is correct, they will say that all of that is English translation and it doesn't count in the Arabic. However, that is not true, because there are mistakes in the Arabic also. Automatically they classify you as some type of demon, deviant, troublemaker, infidel, apostate or something and try to kill you. They are more like devils than Muslims, which means ones of peace. And right in Quran 2-190 it tells you, fight in the cause of Allah those who fight you, but do not transgress limits, for Allah loveth not transgressors. Why would a God, Allah, who says that he is going to judge everybody at the end of the world, tell you to go out and kill people? I hope you do know that the word fight in Arabic and kill or slay are the same word, qatalayu, as found in Quran 2-190, for fight, and qatahiyu, as found in Quran 2-191 for slay. What kind of God would tell human beings to fight each other instead to love each other and to change their hearts with his so-called powers? Your God Allah sounds more like the devil to me. These fanatical Muslims spend a lot of time attacking anybody who calls himself a Muslim. The moment someone starts to question the authenticity, validity, language and the origin on the Quran, or question the mission of the Prophet Muhammad, immediately they send out threats of murder and violence, just like they did to Salman Rushdie, who wrote a book called The Satanic Verses. A bounty for more than $2 million had been placed on Salman Rushdie's life by the Afghanistan authorities. There must have been some truth to these satanic verses for them to put such a high price on Salman Rushdie's life. So it is obvious that what was written in his book had some validity, or otherwise they wouldn't have even bothered. Rushdie was charged with apostasy because he was born Muslim. The book is said to insult the wives of the Prophet Muhammad, and the title of the book itself was even more of an insult. According to Islamic beliefs, Satanic Verses is the name given to a revelation to Muhammad which he later recognized as being passed on to him by the devil. These verses have been taken out of Qurans that are available today, and is considered an unforgivable sin to refer to the story contained in the verses. And the life of the late Dr. Rashad Khalifa, Ph.D., of Tucson, Arizona, was also taken because he revealed information on the number 19, which is the sacred seal of the Quran. These men had every right to write anything they felt like, because Quran 1781 says, when the truth has arrived, and falsehood perished, for falsehood is bound to perish. And in Quran 1827, it says, none can change his words. If these men were liars, don't you believe that Allah would have made that known eventually without you killing or attempting to kill them with your human hands? The bottom line is, Muslims have to come to the reality that it is their turn. All of the other world religions are thousands of years old. They have all been attacked and they have defended themselves the best way they know how. Muslims take pride in attacking other people's religions and have derogatory names for each. But now it's their turn to be questioned and scrutinized. And I'm going to tell you right out, the Islam that is taught today will not be able to defend itself. It is not based on enough facts. They don't want you to question them because they know you will see the weakness in their religion and you will be able to see right through their Quran. The Quran cannot withstand intense scrutiny. Muslims know this is a fact, thus they try to kill anyone who doesn't want to live in their lie. Each sect of Muslims have their own translation of the Quran, and almost each of them are different. No one has ever questioned the arrangement of the Quran based on the word of Uthman, the third Khalifa after Muhammad. Many Muslims have written their own version of the Quran, and within their pages are many theoretical equations, recognized and accepted throughout the world as being logical, according to their accepted hadith. Many Muslim sects use hadith, which are the words of men and not Allah, to support their religious beliefs. And because these sects have been in existence for many years, they have published many books on Islamic subjects, particularly Islamic law and hadith. Yet, they do not recognize the Quran as the source, or their truth. They deviate from the foundation of their religion. This is why there is so much confusion in Islam. Hadith is not the same as following the Quran. Hadith are tales or stories made up by mortal men that are unconfirmed, and they are not the words of Allah, which is what Muslims say the Quran is. Now Muslims, listen to this: if you have a Quran and it gives you all of your laws and deen, way of life, in it, then why all the hadiths? There shouldn't have to be hundreds of hadith books circulating. If Muslims say that the hadith are necessary, then that is a confession that the Quran is not complete. And if you say the Quran is not complete, then you are admitting that your God Allah is incomplete, or gave you the Quran incomplete, and it took mortal men to complete it, what Allah inscribed for you by incorporated hadiths, because your God Allah couldn't complete it. I would like to stop at this point and ask you Muslims, was your God Allah not capable of completing the Quran himself? And this is not to mention that some fanatical Muslims will attack you for speaking out against their hadiths the same way they would if you speak out against the Quran, their holy book. So again, they are making their hadiths equivalent to the Quran of Allah. 95% of their practices today are according to their hadiths, tales of men, and not the Quran. So Muslims really don't follow the Quran, they follow other books written by men like their saints, Saint Bukhari, Saint Muslim, Saint Tirmidhi, Saint Abu Dawood, Saint Anas, Saint Al-Kulani, and the likes of them, which are a collection of traditions that they are calling hadith. The hadith of today are equivalent to the Talmud and Mishnah, which the Jews or Pharisees formulated, Quran 279. According to author, Dr. Robert Morey, in his book Islamic Invasion, page 148-150, he states the following: many of the stories in the Quran come from the Jewish Talmud, the Midrash, and many apocryphal works. This was pointed out by Abraham Geiger in 1833, and further documented by another Jewish scholar, Dr. Abraham Katch, of New York University, in 1954. 1. The source of Surah 335-37 is the fanciful book called the Proto-Evangeliums James the Lesser. 2. The source of Surah 87:19 is the Testament of Abraham. 3. The source of Surah 27:17-44 is the second Targum of Esther. 4. The fantastic tale that God made a man die for 100 years with no three effects on his food, drink, or donkey was a Jewish fable, Surah 2:259 ff. 5. The idea that Moses was resurrected and other material came from the Jewish Talmud, Surah 2:55, 56, 67. 6. The story in Surah 5:30-31 can also be found in pre-Islamic works from Pirkei Rabbi Elazar, the Targum of Jonathan ben Uzziah, and the Targum of Jerusalem. 7. The tale of Abraham being delivered from Nimrod's fire came from the Midrash Rabbah, see Surahs 21:51-71, 29:16, 17, 37:97, 98. It must be also pointed out that Nimrod and Abraham did not live at the same time. Muhammad was always mixing people together in the Quran who did not live at the same time. 8. The non-biblical details of the visit of the Queen of Sheba, Saba, in Surah 27:20-44 came from the second Targum of the Book of Esther. 9. The source of Surah 2:102 is no doubt the Midrash Yalkut, chapter 44. 10. The story found in Surah 7:171 of God lifting up Mount Sinai and holding it over the heads of the Jews as a threat to squash them if they rejected the law, came from the Jewish book of Bodhisara. 11. The story of making of the gold calf in the wilderness, in which the image jumped out of fire fully formed and actually moved, Surah 7:148, 2088, came from Pirkei Rabbi Elazar. 12. The 7 heavens and hells described in the Quran came from the Zohar and the Hagigah. 13. Muhammad utilized the Testament of Abraham to teach that a scale or balance will be used on the Day of Judgment to weigh good and bad deeds in order to determine whether one goes to heaven or hell, Surahs 42:17, 101:6-9. There are other bases which Dr. Morey notes as the source of the Quran surahs, such as Arabian sources, Eastern religious sources, Sabaean sources, heretical Christian sources. So no longer can Muslim leaders try to disguise the fact that their religion is copied from other religions. Muslims have tried to discredit Dr. Morey's claims on the internet, by calling him a liar amongst other things. Yet, they still don't give any real answers to their claims and their rebuttals are weak. In a conversation that took place March 9, 1998 AD, Muslims attempted to defend their faith yet to no avail. Here is part of the conversation and you will see for yourself that Muslims have no answers regardless to whether Maury is right or wrong. This subject is perhaps the most bizarre of Maury's discussions. In a pamphlet he wrote called, Islam, a White Slaver's Religion, Maury proceeds to prove that Muhammad was a white man. That's right folks. Not Semitic, but a descendant of Japheth. He quotes a hadith, saying, of Muhammad from an unspecified source. The hadith come in several versions, depending on who translated a particular version. Maury fails to give the reader the version of the hadith he quotes, thus leaving the reader unable to verify if he was really using any copy of the hadith of Muhammad. Now here's his rebuttal. For the sake of argument, we will take his word for it. The hadith he quotes are actually the words of some of Muhammad's friends. A rider on a camel comes up and asks, who amongst you is Muhammad? The groups answer, this white man reclining on his arm. Maury adds another quote to prove Muhammad was a white man. He quotes another hadith in which Muhammad's friends boast that the Prophet had white armpits. Finally, Maury rests his case by quoting another hadith which states that Muhammad had a white penis. Now, there is work of a PhD for you. White armpits, white penis, and his friends called him a white man. What is going on here? Well, most dark folks have white armpits and penises, compared to the rest of their body that is. So, the only thing left to rationalize is the white man claim of the Prophet's followers. Needs to crawl out of his big chair and travel the Middle East and Africa. Nearly every culture in that part of the world admires the folks among their clans who are lighter than the rest. Even in the USA, black ladies often lighten their skin, white ladies darken their skin. People are funny, right? So, knowing that Muhammad was also claimed by the Semitic Arab Quraysh tribe of Mecca, which is documented all through the Quran, Hadith and history, we can then conclude that Muhammad was not a white man, as Maury is. Muhammad had light-colored skin. That is all. This Muslim is trying to prove that Muhammad wasn't white, yet he can't come up with any facts or evidence to back up his point. He does a lot of name-calling like so many Muslims do and avoiding the facts. So what is his point? He himself says that Dr. Maury doesn't cite any hadith to prove his point yet. This Muslim doesn't use any proof or hadith to prove his claim either. His logic is also weak about Muhammad being light-skinned because there are light-skinned people in the Euro-American race in comparison to others of that race who they would be considered darker. Take for instance, there are pale-skinned Euro-Americans that live in New York. When comparing them to the Euro-Americans that live in South Florida, the Floridians are quite darker. The same applies in the Nubian race. There are those that are light-skinned and those that are darker-skinned, thus his so-called conclusion of Muhammad being light-colored is weak. He is trying not to commit himself to saying that Muhammad was of any particular race. One of many hadith that does say Muhammad's armpits were white is Bukhari 4-765 narrated by Abdullah bin Malik bin Buhaina al-Azdi. Guess what? If his armpits are white or pale, guess what the rest of his body is? Not only that, his point that parts of the human body are lighter than others are true in some cases, considering that some parts of the body receive more sunlight than others. Sahih al-Bukhari, Volume 1, narrated Anas bin Malik, while we were sitting with the Prophet in the mosque, a man came riding on a camel. He made his camel kneel down in the mosque, tied its foreleg and then said, "Who amongst you is Muhammad?" At that time the Prophet was sitting amongst us, his companions, leaning on his arm. We replied, "This white man reclining on his arm." The man then addressed him, "O son of Abdul Muttalib. So no, you can't lie and say that there aren't any hadith that they believe Muhammad was white or any hadith that actually uses the word white implying that Muhammad was a Caucasian. You should ask yourself, why did they specify white man? Are they trying to imply that all the other men were dark-skinned? Or is it to put a picture in your mind of a white man, which in Arabic is a rajulu abyad? This statement sounds fabricated and was inserted just to start confusion. If you were in the company of other people, would you describe an associate of yours sitting next to you as this Russian man, this Oriental man, this black man, etc.? No, you wouldn't. So why was the Prophet Muhammad described as this white man? Why not say this gentleman, or simply this is he? These are subtle racisms that are purposely overlooked in Islam just to keep the peace. The Islam that is practiced today is nothing more than another form of Christianity and a combination of other people's religion. Another point I would like to make about how Muslims don't follow the Quran, the word of their God, but rather the hadiths, tales of men. It is written right in the Quran 279, 371, 668, where it says not to take anything written by man or falsehoods as a guidance, yet Muslims do anyway by adhering to hadiths. Quran 279, then woe to those who write the book with their own hands, and then say, this is from God, to traffic with it for a miserable price. Woe to them for what their hands do write, and for the gain they make thereby. Even their hadith states this. Ahmed Volume 1, from Abi Sayyid al-Khudri said, The apostle said, "Don't you all write anything for me equal to the Quran? Whoever writes anything equal to the Quran, so let it be eliminated." Once again, they are telling you that there can be an equivalent to the Quran, and if there is more than one, to eliminate it or get rid of it. If this is the Almighty Quran, that was divinely received by the Prophet Muhammad, then there is no way that anyone can write anything that is equal to the Quran. This is how you know that the Quran that Muslims hold in their hand today is not the original. What is so ironic is that the Quran 5234, 1788, 1113, 1038, 223, challenges anyone to produce a chapter like it, which means, according to them, that it is impossible for anyone with the help of all the pages and all the ink in the world, to produce one verse, chapter, or a whole book like it. This means that simple stories could have been written, such as the book The Prophet, authored by a Lebanese writer named Khalil Gibran, 1883 to 1931 AD, well known by all classical Arabic-speaking people. His book The Prophet contains some of the most beautiful stories and poetry ever written. A Christian group met the challenge in the year 1987 AD. In a book, The Life of the Messiah, in classical Arabic tongue by Abdo. According to the author, the book was written to show Muslims that the challenge they have been making for 1,400 years has finally been met. In this book, The Life of the Messiah, in a classical Arabic tongue, verses from the Quran were also taken and reworded using the language of the Quran so that the book sounds as if it is written like the Quran. Make note that if the challenge has anything to do with a book being able to match the symbolism in the Quran, then it means nothing, because there is a book more symbolic, which is the book of Revelation called the Injil in Quran 3-3, 549, 571. Christians mock the very style of the Quran, phrases, and the Tasmiyah. This goes to show that it can be done and that anybody can produce the like thereof. Quran 1788, the book is divided into 30 chapters and is comprised of verses compiled from the Gospels of 4 disciples, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Anyone who reads classical Arabic would honestly have to admit that the language and the construction of this book, which is written in the same Arabic of the Quran, its speaking ability is as that of the Quran, and it's equivalent to any of the short chapters of the Quran. Analyze this page from the book The Life of the Messiah in a classical Arabic tongue for yourself. So, now that the challenge has been met, does this mean that their book has to be eliminated because, according to your hadith, this is what it says to do whenever the Quran is defeated? Or does this mean the Quran does have a counterpart that is equal in eloquence, construction, the language, and speaking ability? Thus, the hadith and the Quran has been eliminated by one little book written by a group of Christians. Yet according to Mohammedans it could not be done. So, can Muslims please answer to this? Why did your God Allah allow Christians to mock the very style of your holy book, in which He gave to Muhammad for you? Is the Christian God of the Bible more powerful than the God of the Quran? Or are you openly admitting that the Quran is not divinely inspired by your God Allah, but merely words of men? And Muslims claim that they hate Christians and Jews so much, calling them infidels, kafirs, shaitan, or any other name that they can think of. However, the very Prophet of Islam, Muhammad, married a Christian and a Jew. According to the Dictionary of Islam, by Thomas Patrick Hughes, these women were Rayhana, a Jewess whose husband was cruelly murdered in the massacre of the Banu Qurayza. Muhammad offered to marry her if she would embrace Islam. She refused to forsake the faith of her forefathers, and consented to become his concubine instead of his wife. Page 532, Mary the Copt, a concubine of Muhammad's and the mother of his son Ibrahim, who died in infancy. She was a Christian slave girl presented to Muhammad by the Roman governor of Egypt. Page 328, as you can see, the hypocrisy is obvious, and until this very day, Muslim men will marry women outside of their religion, although the Quran forbids them not to even make friends with them, Quran 554, let alone to take a non-Muslim woman's hand in marriage. And let's not forget the relationship between Princess Diana, 1961 to 1997 AD, an Anglican Christian, and Dadi Al-Fayed, died 1997 AD, an Egyptian Saudi and Muslim, that made headlines all over the world after they'd been killed in a car accident. The union between the two met much opposition. However, the point is the princess was reported pregnant by Al-Fayed and they were to soon marry, which is totally forbidden in Islam. Yet, Muslims will point the finger real quick at anyone else who goes outside of their religious laws. This just goes to show that the Islamic doctrine is outdated and on the decline. Information that Muhammad taught and preached 1,400 years ago just does not fit in with today's society. Marrying foreign women in the Islamic culture is almost as marrying someone who is non-Muslim. In a book entitled Price of Honor, by Jan Goodwin, page 139, an Arab woman by the name of Sheikha Lubna bint Khalid bin Sultan al-Qasimi of Sharjah, of the United Arab Emirate, was asked, could Lubna not marry outside the royal family? After all, one of her brothers has had 3 foreign wives. She replied, he is a man, for the women, we cannot. The family simply wouldn't permit it. The ruler would not give his permission and he has to approve my marriage, and neither would my mother. Yet, a Muslim woman cannot marry a non-Muslim man. This is unheard of in the Islamic faith, especially in Egypt where the Islamists are moving in at an extremely rapid pace. She would be banished and scorned and in most cases killed if she were to do such a thing. However, Muslim men marry non-Muslim women and nothing is wrong with that, although Quran 4:25 says to marry faithful women. The following is an excerpt from the Laws of Marriage and Divorce in Islam by Maulana Abdullah Al-Maududi. Muslims, both men and women, are forbidden to have marital relations with non-Muslims who are not believers in the scriptures. The simple reason is that their religion, their thinking, their civilization and culture and their way of life are so different from those of the Muslims that it is impossible for a true Muslim to develop soul-deep love and all-weather harmony in his relations with them. If despite differences, the two of them are tied together by the marriage bond, the relationship will be only carnal. It will not be a truly cultural relationship. The union will be devoid of love and compassion. If it is not, the love and compassion are sure to do more harm than good both to Islamic culture and to the Muslim partner of the union. Now let's take a look at the hadith which Muslims have more faith in than the Quran itself. Sahih al-Bukhari Volume 7, narrated Nafi, whenever Ibn Umar was asked about marrying a Christian lady or a Jewess, he would say, Allah had made it unlawful for the believers to marry ladies who ascribe partners in worship to Allah, and I do not know of a greater thing, as regards to ascribing partners in worship, etc. to Allah, than that a lady should say that Jesus is her Lord although he is just one of Allah's slaves. Right here this hadith tells you not to marry a woman who ascribes partners in worship of Allah or one who says that Jesus is her Lord. Would you please tell me, do Christians believe this? Then Mary the Copt, who was a Christian, must have believed this too. So tell me, why did the Prophet Muhammad marry her? According to the Quran, she was not a good believing woman. Another book called Purdah and the Status of Women in Islam by S. Abdullah Al-Maududi says, then man is entitled to full freedom in respect of his marriage. He can marry a woman, whether Muslim or scriptuary, and can keep a slave girl. But the woman is not wholly free in this regard. She cannot marry a non-Muslim. They are not lawful for the disbelievers, nor are the disbelievers lawful for them. Quran 60:10. He had the audacity to use the Quran 60:10 to support his argument, but he is being very deceitful. He should have used the whole verse. But he didn't, because within that very verse it tells you that the believing woman is for the believing man and vice versa. Therefore, it is unlawful for both a Muslim man and woman to marry a non-Muslim. L's Holy Quran 91:10, Original Order, O you who are faithful, among you, when the female faithful women, who migrated Mahairat, come to you all, the faithful, so test them. The source, El-Elo knows their faith, Liman. So if you all know that they are faithful women, Mu'minat, then don't return them to the concealers of the facts, Al-Kufar. For faithful women are forbidden, halal to them, the concealers of the facts, and neither are they, concealers of the facts, forbidden to marry them, and give them, those who conceal that which they know to be the facts, that which they shared willingly. There is not a junah, crime upon you all, if you tankihun marry them, and you give them their ujur, rewards, dowries, and don't hold them back, the guarding of the kawafir, women who conceal that which they know to be the facts. You all can asaluyu, ask for that which you have shared willingly, their dowries, that is the decision, hukmu of the source, El-Elo. He decides between you all, and the source, El-Elo is knowing, Alim, Hakim, wise. In this excerpt S. Abdullah Al-Maududi even says that a man can have a slave girl. Of course he says this, the Prophet Muhammad exhibited this himself by his marriage to the same Christian woman who was also a slave. All of this created just to hide the fact that the Prophet Muhammad married a Coptic Christian. The Quran says that you are to marry good believing women, or just write out Muslim women only, Quran 2-221. Would a Jew, Buddhist, Zoroastrian or Christian woman classify as a good believing woman? I would also like to know, how can Muslims say that a Coptic Christian is a good believing woman when Christians believe in Jesus as God and three gods in one? Even if she had the intentions to convert, it was wrong for the Prophet Muhammad to marry her before she converted. Your problem is because you won't accept and admit that for one, the Prophet Muhammad was just a man, who could make mistakes like any other man. You have to come up with the allowances and reasons for his behavior. If you stop trying to make the Prophet Muhammad into some kind of infallible God figure, then people would be able to accept his errors and you wouldn't have to make up things like this to validate what he did. And two, that you are being hypocrites by making up laws pertaining to who and what kind of women when the Quran makes it clear that you should marry a believing woman just as she should marry a believing man. Just admit it, this is the kind of subject which you never bring up because you don't have any answers for it. Muslims always say a Muslim man can marry a non-Muslim, but a Muslim cannot marry a non-Muslim man. That was created to hide the fact the Prophet Muhammad married a Coptic woman, Quran 4:25, and to justify your own infidelity. This type of unfairness goes on every day throughout the Muslim world. Muslim women need to wake up and take heed to these facts. While we are on the subject of Muslim women, let's talk about how they are mistreated throughout the Muslim world. I would like to ask, what are women promised once they get to heaven? If their husbands, Muslim men, are promised pubescent maidens in heaven? Quran 56:22, 35-38. What does God have in store for these devoted women? According to the Quran itself, in chapter 40 verse 40, the righteous whether man or woman will enter the garden, and in chapter 43 verse 70 it mentions that men will enter with their wives. So what role do the maidens play in all of this? This was done to appeal to man's sexual desires. So, according to Islamic beliefs, you are promised absolutely nothing. You are not promised anything on earth nor in heaven. And according to Muhammad, the ratio of women destined for hell is quite high. According to Hadith Volume 1, 28, 301, Volume 2, 161 it says, the Prophet said, I was shown the hellfire and that the majority of its dwellers were women. And Volume 2, 541 goes on to say, O women! I have not seen anyone more deficient in intelligence and religion than you. Any father believing this of his own daughter must be crazy, not to mention that women are literally doomed from birth. And with this type of mentality don't really stand a chance at becoming anything other than some man's slave. Let's not forget, when you are talking about Muslim women, you are dealing with two extremes. Firstly, you have Islamists who have so many restrictions and are so extreme in their belief system, keep their women cloaked and have very extreme laws, and then women are not allowed to do practically anything, and in most cases are abused. This comes from them interpreting the laws the way they want to and making up then laws to keep women suppressed to make themselves feel like men. In certain Islamic countries where women have a little liberty, Islamic extremists are moving to change that. Militant Islamists believe that Islamic law, Sharia, was revealed by Allah, which is totally incorrect. Sharia was added in the centuries after the Prophet Muhammad's death in 632 AD by rulers wanted to make themselves seem holy as well as dictate, and used religion as their cover. For women who violate these laws, they can be easily put to death without question. The family members usually get an underage brother to kill her, so in case of investigation, it is dropped. This is only a small factor in how women are dealt with in various Islamic countries. In a book entitled Price of Honor written by Jan Goodwin, page 337, a feminist named Hala Sirhan, the editor of an Egyptian woman's magazine, speaks about the conditions of Islamic countries and how unjustly women are treated by males, including their own husbands, brothers, and fathers, because of their very religion. She states, women are really crushed and maltreated in this society. Men realize that the religion gives them a license. Even my 6-year-old son knows that because he is male he is automatically powerful. The man is the one who can desert or divorce the wife at whim. The man is the one who can do as he pleases, not the woman. It is men who can take secret wives without informing their first wife. It is so common here to be at a funeral when a woman and a man's secret second wife. Even with my husband I fear polygamy. It puts all women in jeopardy. Generations of mothers have taught their daughters to give their husband everything he wants, never confront him. Even if they know he is fooling around. Here it is 2024 AD and women are still going through the same suppression they suffered centuries ago due to fanatics. And then there is the other extreme where some Muslim women are without any laws and you can't tell the difference between them and a prostitute. Because of this, fundamentalists are moving into these countries to take control. So they are going through a vicious cycle.